Hello, welcome to my vlog. Today is Thursday, November 10th, 2016. It's 12:28 a.m. My name is Danny. So, as always, on my vlog, I'm just going to touch on a variety of topics. So, I'm sort of getting better at this, I guess, with the camera. I'm definitely no expert, but practice makes perfect. So the more I do these, the more practice I get, the better I'll get. So today I'm trying to show off this cool new poster I got. I talked about it before. It's a poster of Paris, France, and it's a hologram type poster. So it's pretty cool. So hopefully I'll be able to get it into most of this vlog. So, first of all, I just wanted to talk about soccer a little bit. So, we had a indoor soccer pickup on Sunday at 6. So, yeah, it was kind of interesting because I posted the game in some groups at a pretty reasonable time. It's not like I did it at the last minute or anything, and I posted it in, the regular ones that are most popular. And it was on a Sunday. Sunday is a pretty good day, right? It's the weekend. Sunday is pretty chill, and 6 p.m. is a pretty good time. It's like not early in the morning, not too early in the afternoon. If you go out the night before, maybe you had a few drinks, get a little hungover, 6 p.m. You have plenty of time. So Sunday at 6 is really ideal, and it's not that easy to book either because I think a lot of people would like to book that time. So I was pretty disappointed when we had a very low turnout. For some reason, not very many people showed up. And things added up to make things worse. For example, a lot of the times people are just a little kind of dumb when it comes to these types of things, because a lot of people who come to these, I don't really know them, but they really only want to play games, and that's all they want to do is play game, and they want to just play game right away. They don't want to do anything else besides play games. So they don't want to practice. They don't want to do drills, like no types of exercise or anything like that. And so people, even if you take it back a step, people will sort of look on Facebook and they'll see if there's a low number, and then they'll think, oh, well, there's not going to be very many people there, not enough people for a game, so then they won't show up at all. But that's wrong, because in my group, a lot of people just tend to show up without confirming on Facebook. Or another example would be people will show up, and then if they notice that there's just a small amount of people who are there, they'll think, oh, well, that's not enough for a game, and just right away they'll just go straight home. That's kind of dumb, because a lot of people will tend to show up later or late, and so all you have to do is just wait a few more minutes and more people will show up, and then you can have a game. Another kind of dumb thing that happens is people will get there, they'll think not enough people is there, and then they'll just go somewhere else and play basketball with a different group or something like that. I mean, you came all the way here to play soccer, right? You didn't go all the way there to play basketball, so that's kind of stupid, right? I notice all of these things, and because I tend to organize these, I take all of these into consideration. So I have to really just make an assessment, really, that's based on like our previous game. And so if not enough people show up, then that's just telling me that I'm not going to bother book very many, right? So I've talked about this before, but I mean, I'll book maybe like one game a week, and then if I see there's a good turnout, maybe I can bump it up from like one game a week to 2 games a week, right? And that makes sense because like if you can't make it during the week, then you can make the other one on the weekend, or vice versa, right? But if I notice that people aren't showing up at all, then I'm not going to bump it up. I'm just going to keep it at its very minimal. And so that's what I'm going to do is, for now anyways, I'm just going to keep it to 1 game a week. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about today is, so there was just an election, I heard. Well, the US election. So wanted to talk about that because I've sort of been following it. And so obviously Donald Trump won. So why do I care? Well, I have some friends and family who live in the States, and I'm quite sure that, well, I mean, it's one of my favorite places to visit, and I can picture myself like going there after I graduate. So yeah, it is relevant to me. So when I was kind of like listening to the analysts on TV and stuff like that, you know, like the polls were kind of always showing that Hillary Clinton was quite a few notches up, quite consistently. And then throughout almost, I think it was like that last month when that video surfaced of Trump saying those derogatory comments about that lady, and then all of those like women making those allegations, and then the House Speaker and the rest of the Republicans sort of dumping him. They were kind of saying that his campaign was just taking a nosedive, and within like the last 1 or 2 weeks, the polls were giving Clinton quite the edge. And so I pretty much watched like most of the coverage on CNN last night, and yeah, it's just, bottom line is Trump won by a pretty big margin, you know, taking important states like Florida, North Carolina, and I think Michigan and Pennsylvania, those huge important states, right? And so he did win by a big margin, and I guess what the analysts were saying was basically the polls were wrong. And the polls were wrong because there's a huge secret vote for Trump, and these types of voters, they don't really reveal anything to those pollster type people, right? And it seems like the majority of those people are white people, or they said something like a class in of the white, or actually I think they were talking about, when they were talking about women, where the woman's vote wasn't an issue, but it was more of the class part of the gender, meaning I'm not too sure exactly what that meant, but maybe I'll try to figure that out later. But it's a little more complicated, so it's something that they talked about. But yeah, like I'm a little worried because Trump's always been talking about like deporting illegal aliens, and not letting, like, screening Muslim people, and it's already really hard sometimes to get in and out of that US border, and I think now it's going to be even harder, especially for people who are like minorities, right? So yeah, it's kind of a little scary. But anyways, what do we got here? We have the university newspaper. So we have the Memorial University newspaper. What do we got here today? We have what do we got here? This looks kind of interesting. It says New Student Society on Campus. Unity, progress, and visibility among goals of newly established Black Students Association. And the contributor is David Gonzalez Vargas. Well, that looks kind of interesting. So maybe let's talk about that a little bit. So, I don't really know very much about this new society. The little that I do know is sort of like in the US, where you have all of these, like this Black Lives Matter movement, right? So a lot of that stems from people of a certain ethnicity. Well, in that case, like Black people who feel, that they're underrepresented or mistreated or whatever, right? Well, I mean, I don't really know much about this society on campus, but maybe I'll just make a few comments that, like, as a minority myself, I can really sort of relate to that, right? Like, nobody really wants to say aloud the words racism sometimes, because it's a very strong word, and so nobody really talks about it. But as a minority, and like being on campus for a few years and being on campus quite regularly, racism or discrimination, it's something that I can really relate to. And it doesn't mean that it has to be something overt, like something extreme. I know I'm being a little extravagant by saying, whether it's a lynching or, burning cross. It doesn't really have to be like that. But racism can also or mostly be something that's in your brain, right? It's something more psychological, right? So, like, things like, for example, like when you go to class and like you sit next to a white person, and then right away they notice you're not white, and then they get out and go sit somewhere else, right? Or when you have like when you sit in class and you see like all white people sit in one little group, right? And then all like maybe Asians in one group and black people in another group, right? Or kind of like when you're in social situations and like all the white people are always talking to each other, and you may go up and try to talk to them and they don't talk to you, and they're nice to everyone else but they're not nice to you, or they just won't let you in, and you know, and that type of thing. Like that's something really that I can sort of relate to. And so like I sort of get attracted to these types of groups, and I think that they're great because, you know, as minorities we tend to a lot of the times bond with each other because there's one thing that we have in common is that we're minorities, right? And so the common thread that we have is that we know how it feels like to be discriminated against, and other ethnic groups don't know or understand that feeling. And so therefore like we tend to help support each other because none of us want to be outcasted or left out or discriminated against in that type of way. So like I can really like understand how, you know, why a bunch of students would want to create such a group, right? And it's kind of like, even if I think of my soccer group, right? I mean, most of us are ethnic minorities, and it's kind of weird. Like our group is like, maybe it's because we don't play enough, or a lot of us come from very distant places, and some of us are shy or whatever, but I'd kind of like us to improve upon maybe kind of like connecting with each other a little more, or to be a little more sociable and stuff like that, right? Like in the past I would suggest things like in meeting up to do something social after one of the games, but I suggested that a few times and like nobody was really interested, therefore I stopped asking, right? But like I'm sure that like a lot of people would rather have something more than just to play soccer and go straight home, right? Like most soccer groups or soccer organizations or soccer teams, you know, part of soccer is about cohesiveness and bonding and that type of thing. And so kind of like in real teams, they kind of like almost force people to do social things together so that people can bond or whatever, right? So like it's not that like, so it might appear that like my group is just only soccer, but I don't tend to bring it up that much because like I don't know if there's like interest in it or that type of thing. But sometimes people just have to just mention it or whatever. Okay, so I think that's it for now. So yeah, Talk to you later.